If Drupal core gives you 20% of a project upfront, then a distribution could surely do 80% upfront. But of course, it hasn't been an easy journey with needing to make Drupal core actually support exportables and support distributions, as well as making Drupal.org actually support distributions. So in the beginning, you had distributions such as OpenAtrium that had to do their own websites where you could download the distribution and get support and contribute. And by doing that, they would just go to their own island and split themselves from the Drupal community. And this really did have consequences that we will mention later on. But at the end of 2009, we finally got the ability to package distributions on Drupal.org. And in March 2012, so a year back, the system got extended to support features that modern distributions rely on. So features such as downloading libraries, downloading patches, using dev releases. And distributions got featured more prominently on Drupal.org itself. And in the previous year, we have seen a new generation of Drupal distributions appear. So distributions such as Commerce Kickstart v2, such as Drupal Commons, such as Spark, such as Panoply, Recruiter, Urpal, NodeStream, and many, many others. So it has been a really exciting year for Drupal distributions, and I think more and more people are starting to see and appreciate what distributions can offer, and for me it has opened a whole new view of what Drupal 7 is, and it really got me excited again. So I will be focusing on 3 distributions today. The first one is Commerce Kickstart, of course. So we built Commerce Kickstart in order to provide a user-friendly e-commerce solution based on the Drupal Commerce framework. So that meant taking Drupal core, taking Drupal Commerce, and then building a streamlined administration that is focused on the e-commerce use cases. It also meant building responsive, mobile-ready front end with many features such as image zooms and slideshows and faceted search and so on and so on. We provided built-in payment gateways and analytics and did many things that were later incorporated in other distributions, starting the trend of sharing solutions and the trend of cross-pollination that we have going on right now. The second one, and the one that really gets me excited, is Panoply. So Panoply is built to be used as a base distribution, which means that you're supposed to use it to build your own distribution. And OpenAtrium will be based on it. Distributions such as Open Academy are already built on it. And if you saw Spark and got excited about it, this provides even more built using today's stable technology. So this is a distribution that's completely panels oriented, that provides amazing in-place page building, fully responsive layouts, and in addition to that, the faceted search, the streamlined administration, and it provides apps, which is something that we will be focusing on later. And the last one is Drupal Commons. So Drupal Commons recently got version 3 out, and it's technologically really interesting. It has great mindshare in the Drupal community. It provides great community building tools. So out of the box, you get blogs and discussions and documents and wikis and events, activity streams based on message, and so on. And of course, the usual suspects such as the responsive design, responsive layouts, faceted search, streamlined admin, and so on. And while you're listening to me talking, you can see that I'm starting to repeat myself a bit, and in that repetition we see what the expectations from modern distribution are. So we see that in addition to, of course, having the high-level assumption that a distribution needs to have batteries included, meaning that I should have 80% of my site provided and a large part of my use case already solved for me with demo content to demonstrate all the features and so on. We also have the lower level expectations, such as providing an improved admin experience. Because let's face it, none of us are perfectly happy with Drupal 7 out of the box. We add things such as views and views bulk operations. We build views that are customly tailored to our user roles, we add additional modules, so there's always something that we do. Then there is the responsive front-end team to make the whole thing mobile ready, and of course just getting the time savings associated with using a modern theme, and then having quick and easy to use search and so on. So I really believe that these are the best practices that each team needs to take into account when they are building a website as well. And that is a part of what a distribution is. It is a set of best practices from a specific company. And when building Kickstart, we incorporated years of our own experience of building websites into that distribution. So let's start by examining the basic concepts and problems in building a distribution. So this is something that each distribution shares. This is something that we are trying to tackle together, and this is something that we need to spend more time on in order to solve it properly and provide a better experience for our end users. So what are the distribution building blocks? Well, we start from an install profile, we add a Drush Make, features, demo content, sugar, spice, everything nice, and we're done. So we start from an install profile, and the install profile is the heart of a Drupal installation. Every single Drupal installation has an install profile currently set. So even if you install regular Drupal, you probably have the standard profile set, and if you're using Kickstart or Commons, then you have that. And an install profile determines which modules get enabled, which theme gets set, and it owns the installer, which means that it can add additional pages or change existing ones. It can add additional tasks, it can change the visuals and so on. And of course it can implement hooks, because installation profiles actually act as modules inside the Drupal system, but install profiles usually delegate that to modules that are included with the distribution. And when we build an install profile with all dependencies, we get a distribution. And in order to get all those dependencies, we need Drush Make. So Drush Make is a file that the make file is something that each distribution needs to have, and it basically tells the packaging system what to download. So we tell it, okay, please get this version of Drupal core, get this list of modules. For this module, use the dev release. For this, you need to use the exact git commit, apply these patches, take these themes, take a set of libraries that I need, and then package all that and give me an archive I can use. And with libraries, we do have certain limitations, so we can only use libraries that are already on the Drupal.org whitelist, which means that they have been cleared in the sense that they respect the licensing guidelines needed for them to actually be included in an archive on Drupal.org. But the process is fairly fast if you do know that, if the library is not on the list, but you do know that it does satisfy the requirements. So I don't consider that much of a blocker. And based on this file, we build the archive, and then we have a part of the puzzle. So we have all of the modules and themes that we need. We have some basic configuration that was done by the install profile, and now we actually need the implementations of the features. And this is where the features module comes into play. So imagine that you are building Drupal Commons today, and you decided that you need to have events. So for events, you need to create an event node type, you need to create a view that lists those nodes, you need to have a bunch of variables that are set around that node type, you need to have maybe custom permissions or menus, that node type has fields, and features allows you to take all that and export it. So features tries to solve the exportable problem of Drupal core. And some things that it handles are already natively exported, while others it handles itself. So features gives me a module with all of the related functionality and the dependencies set that I can place into Git and I can use, and will live happily ever after, or not. So you can see here an example of some Drupal Commons features such as groups and wikis and posts and events. So these are all examples of what I'm talking about. Well, however, it's not that perfect. And I think that is in large because features were not really built to power a distribution. They were built to power a workflow for existing sites. So features can't depend on one another. So if I have a product feature, I can't have a product slideshow feature that requires it, because when it is enabled, everything that's provided by the product feature will not be available at that point, which is a problem. Features are not uninstallable, which is also a problem, because it means that if your distribution provides a set of features that I don't need a specific one, it is really hard for me to remove that. And this is why some people say, okay, a distribution does too much, it is not flexible enough for me. They're not interoperable. I can't take a feature from Commons easily and place it into Kickstart or Panoply and so on. And then we have the problem of default configuration and default content. So imagine if I was building events for commerceguys.com. So I know exactly how that functionality needs to look. And I will export that, I will place that into Git, I will deploy that. And afterwards, someone might make manual changes to the website, and I will be able to see what those changes were, meaning that the feature marks itself as overridden and shows me a diff. I can revert those changes and so on. But the problem with distributions is that you always want to change that functionality to fit your actual use case. You don't want my version of events, you want to make your own. And that is a completely different thing. So if I provide a feature with 5 product types, you can't delete them, ever. You can't remove them. As soon as you start customizing something to fit your e-commerce website, the feature is marked as overridden. There's no way to separate the configuration that came as a default and configuration that's actually made by you and for your website. And this is a huge problem that we haven't solved yet. So ideally, the default configuration will be something that is installed initially, but then it lets you go, which means you can delete anything, you can change anything, and it doesn't scream or shout at you. And if you decide to restore the default at some point, you can do so. And if you decide you want to version your changes and your version of the configuration, you can also do so. And we have a module that tries to tackle this, and it tackles a large part of it. It's called default config. It's made by the features maintainer, but it's not stable yet, and it does have problems when you actually want to version your version of it. So if you want to take your version of events and place that into Git and so on. So it is something to take into account, and this is the solution that is used by Panoply. Commons and Kickstart are not using it right now. So that's one piece of the puzzle. For example, the default product types that I can give you with Kickstart. And the second part is the default content. So users expect to be able to get default content that will show them each feature of their distribution of their website, so that they don't need to leave anything up to imagination and they can start from there. Of course, the default content needs to be easy to remove. So at one point I want to say, okay, I'm just creating my own website and I'm done with this. So it needs to be easily removable, but also the distribution needs to know what to remove. So if I gave you a demo product type, I need to know that I am only deleting the products that I created myself as the distribution maintainer and not maybe some that you created yourself. So we need to have that tracking. And there are no good solutions right now. Well, maybe the one I'm using, but let's start from the beginning. There's the default content module that is used by Panoply, and it basically exports your content into a hook. So even images, everything is in the hook and it's there. And there are several problems here. So first, the module is deprecated, it's no longer getting maintained, and it's not really easy to modify the demo content. I can't just replace an image in a directory and then commit that. I need to go through the whole process of modifying the image through the UI and then re-exporting that and so on. And then it points itself to UUID features, but that module is also half broken in beta, so it just doesn't work. Of course, you can, during installation, you can just run node save and create your own demo content like Commons does, but that only works if you only have a few nodes you're creating. And if you're creating a wide range of demo content across many modules where some are optionally enabled, then you need something more flexible. And for that, Kickstart is using Migrate. So Migrate is the closest that Drupal has gotten to a generic import-export API. And it allows me to point a migration class to a CSV file with the content and images that are separately there, and it will then detect them and run the migrations. And it has a wide range of features that could fit into its own session that really make this flexible. And in addition to allowing me to do the default content easily, it also provides a great example on how you import data into a distribution into Kickstart, which means that anyone can take that as a starting point, modify it, and then use it to import from another website, another CSV file, or whatever else. Of course, there are community problems with developing Drupal distributions. So first, a distribution will have something like 100 modules. Drupal 7 doesn't really do much out of the box, and while the modules are small, you do need a lot of them. And some will be completely abandoned. And of course, you would avoid using them, you would try to find stable alternatives, but sometimes they don't exist, which means that you are the one who will need to go through the abandoned module process, which takes weeks in order to wrestle control back and start committing and maybe even rewrite the whole thing. Maybe you have a maintainer that's kind of there, so you would email him first and get a response and maybe become the co-maintainer. Then there's a big problem that the Drupal community has in general, and that is we hate to do releases. The Drupal community hates releases. We never do them. So we try to tag an endless stream of betas which completely bypasses the security team review, or we just leave releases that are a year and a half old, and when someone complains of bugs, we say, well, just use dev. And that's what I did for a long time. I just used dev releases of everything. But the problem with that is that with each build, you get a different distribution because you have a constant set of moving parts and new bugs that appear, and it's really hard to keep track of. So the only thing you can do is go through the issue queues and create endless issues saying, please, please create a release. And this works in a surprising number of cases, but we really do need to work on educating the community on the importance of making regular, stable releases with regular, stable code. So that's a big part of it. Another part is the problem of patches. So frequently you will have patches in the issue queue that are not yet even committed. And those patches need to be added to the Drush Make file. So that way they get applied until they're committed. I also forgot to mention that if you want to use dev releases, the best thing that you can do is do what Commons does and just point your Drush Make file to a specific Git commit, because then it gets fixed to that point and it doesn't change when you rebuild the distribution and new commits get added to the branch. So the problem with patches is that you now have a patched distribution. And what happens when the user wants to update? Updates are a big part of why people are afraid of distributions. I see posts on Stack Exchange saying, do I really need Commons? Can I actually take the parts from Kickstart that are important and just do it myself on my own website? Because many people don't trust distributions and they don't know how they will update, they don't know how they will maintain it. And previously you had distributions saying, just take all of our modules and move it from the profiles directory into the sites directory, and then just update it yourself. And that works when you have 10 modules, but when you have 100 and many of them are in a patched state, you can't depend on doing that. So what we did for Kickstart, and this has been copied in every distribution that got released after that, is we hide the update status of all projects that are inside Kickstart. Every module, every theme, everything. It's not shown in the update status at all. And what we say is you update Kickstart as a whole. You don't update views, you don't update Drupal core, you update Kickstart to the new release, and we are the ones who will handle the updates, the testing, and ensure that everything still works properly. And this does create a need for more frequent releases because people don't want to wait, especially if it's a cool new release of Drupal Commons or whatever. And of course, it creates a problem with security updates. So every Wednesday, a security release could happen. And once that release happens, those modules need to be updated. So what we did in our code is we hide the security updates for 48 hours, and that gives us time to tag a new release of Kickstart. When those 48 hours pass, we show the update in all its red glory, and then you can panic. And of course, it usually takes us less than 24 hours to actually tag a new Kickstart release and solve the problem for you. Then there's the problem of support and maintenance. So initially, when you had OpenAtrium, they would point you to their own website. So you would go to OpenAtrium and you would say, okay, I have a problem, X doesn't work. And then the people there tell you, well, it's actually a problem with module Y. Please go to their issue queue and report it. And then you go to their issue queue and you say, hi, I'm using OpenAtrium and I have this problem. And the maintainer says, I'm sorry, I don't support OpenAtrium, and he sets it to won't fix. And then you have people who are constantly sent back and forth, and they're not getting any help. And of course, this has gotten much better once distributions came back to Drupal.org. So the first thing that needs to be done is separating the bug reports from support requests. We don't do support in the issue queues, almost not ever. And to be honest, I feel guilty every time I do it, because issue queues are a terrible place to do support requests and to do support in general, because it's not searchable, it's not reusable, it's just a horrible format for that, and you just spend your time providing the support, but it only benefits the original poster. And this is why we stopped doing that for Drupal Commons. We are not doing that for Kickstart. In Views, it's really not done anymore. There's no official policy yet, but you can't really get many responses to support requests. If you want support, you go to Stack Exchange. That's what we tell our users, and of course we are there. So that means that when I see Kickstart questions, I will respond there, and then it can be easily searchable. People can upvote and add comments and edit my answer, and it's a much better way of sharing knowledge about Drupal. And then the remaining bug reports are triaged, and we sent the relevant ones to the relevant contribs. So if I see that it is a Views bug, I will send that to their issue queue and probably provide a patch, and same for any other module. So this means that the only issues that stay in the actual distribution queue are related to the actual distribution. And of course, with Kickstart, we have done a great job of separating functionality into separate contribs that you can use even if you're not using the distribution. So I have over 20 contrib modules that are a part of Commerce Kickstart, and I have a separate project for the admin theme and the front-end theme, so I can always move to those queues, and that really helps the process function, and so far we haven't had any problems. So the main question is, how can we keep this sustainable? Who is going to pay for all this? Because this is a huge amount of work. Every time that you need to create a new release, imagine if you have 20 contribs, and for each one you need to go through 5 issues. Some have patches that you need to finish, some have ready patches, some just want support. But for 20 modules, that's 100 issues. So this means that you are spending days and days every time that you want to create a new distribution release. And this is just for minimal maintenance. This is not adding exciting new features and so on. So this is just expensive business. So, and this is the biggest part that it's just a topic that we haven't discussed much. We are only now starting to talk about it, and we don't really have ready solutions. How are we going to pay for distributions? Right now, distributions are mostly a lead generation tool, which means that Drupal shop creates a distribution, people see it, use it, and then based on that experience, they give new projects to the Drupal shop. And maybe the shop can charge for some customizations, support, training, and maybe they will use it for client sites, which means that their development time will be decreased. But still, it's never enough to justify the cost of a distribution. And when you talk to shops that maintain a lot of distributions, you see that they are not really happy. which means that it is unsustainable. And if it's unsustainable, we won't have a healthy ecosystem of Drupal distributions. And in addition to that, it's hard to rely on it as a lead generation tool when it has such low usage. So look at the numbers here. Drupal core itself has 870,000 installs. Commerce Kickstart, the most popular Drupal distribution, has 7,000 installed sites. The next 10 distributions combined have 4,000 installs. So those are pathetic numbers. And this means that distributions make up 1% of all Drupal installs. No matter how much we talk about them, people are just not using them as much. And I think that it comes a lot. The reason for that is that they don't trust the updates, they don't trust the sustainability, and they're not sure it is flexible enough, so they just choose to build from scratch. So we need to figure out where we are going to get money. And in Commerce Guys, we've had an easier job than most distribution makers have, because we have created the Commerce Marketplace, which solves a great need for users. So users say, okay, I'm in Sweden, what is the best payment provider to use in Sweden? And we would say, I don't know. And then they would complain that there are no good payment solutions for Drupal commerce in Sweden. Now we go to payment providers and they pay us. And we create the integration module for them and we place it in Commerce Kickstart. We enable it when the user selects Sweden. So they get the privilege of being exclusive for a country. The users get a stable and well-tested solution, and we get money. So it's a great way of funding distribution development, but I do realize that it can't be applied to every distribution and every use case. So in this case, the connecting partners with end users has benefits for all sides in the transaction, but it might not always be true. So another big topic that could use a session of its own is the topic of apps. So this is something that is being attempted in Panoply and OpenPublic and OpenPublish and OpenAtrium and many other distributions. So it is a way of creating an app store inside Drupal. An app is basically a wrapped feature or a module that has its own configuration and demo content which you can download. So you can get an app for events and an app for groups or wikis or anything else. So this concept is not really advanced right now. The software is not there yet. And of course the question is, at which point would you charge? So should I charge you money for a feature that provides an image gallery? And what does that mean in the context of a distribution? Does that mean that I should provide a bare bones distribution and all fancy features are going to go to a paid section? How much money can I even earn by doing that? Also, do I charge for specific modules, getting the distribution? Those are all questions that we don't have answers to. And I'm aware that trying to get money that way usually doesn't give you much money while it costs you a lot of goodwill. But we always need to come back to the fact that the Drupal distributions are not currently sustainable, and you don't always have the capital of Acquia behind you, or the business model of Commerce Guys, or Pantheon, or whatever is funding each of the distributions that I'm mentioning. So it's a good topic to explore for regular developers who want to provide a solution of their own. So let's dive into the more technical part and just discuss the specific solutions that were made in some of the distributions. The install process is where you first create contact with your customer. And so far, Commerce Kickstart is the only distribution that themes the install process. So if it is your distribution, it should have your logo, your colors, your theme. It should be streamlined and offer information relevant to the distribution. This is your first chance at making a good impression, and most distributions don't bother at all. Also, you need to hide redundant pages. So this is something Kickstart has done, and now Commons is doing in many other distros. Basically, you the first page you see when installing Drupal is the selection of an install profile. But if you downloaded a distribution, we already know which profile you want to use. You want to use the one you downloaded, so we hide that screen. There's also a screen for selecting the language, and it always has only English if you download a distribution and don't add anything else, so we hide that screen as well. Because even if you added manual translations, the translations will probably be generic to Drupal, which means they won't have translations for the strings that are specific to that distribution and their additions to the install process. So you would get maybe some strings in French and some strings in English, and it looks horrible. So we just hide those initial pages. And then we add additional pages where you can make decisions on how your site will function. We ask you if you want specific features. We ask you if you want demo content. We ask you to provide more details, and that way you get an experience that is more streamlined to your needs. Then we add additional tasks that, based on that, create demo content, enable additional modules, and do everything else. And last, after the installation is done, we redirect you to the site, and there we show you the getting started help. So one of the problems that users had was, okay, I installed the distribution, how do I use it now? What can it do? So it is our job to provide a streamlined experience and just guide them through it. And let's see how that looks. So this is the installation of Commerce Kickstart. You can see that it has a completely custom theme. It provides relevant information for Commerce Kickstart, and it's just much more user-friendly than the regular installation. Then you can see the page where we ask for additional information. So I can select my default country, and based on that, a different set of modules will be enabled. So I know which payment gateways and shipping providers are preferred in the US compared to France, for instance. We ask you whether you want the demo store. And if you don't want the demo store, we ask you whether you want the blogs, the slideshows, and all of the other features that we have added separately. We ask you whether you're planning to localize and translate your store, and based on that we configure the languages, we enable the internationalization module, and so on. So by asking you questions, we allow you to shave off more development time because we do all of the heavy lifting for you. You can see here how it looks in Drupal Commons. They don't really customize their install much, but they do have that custom page that allows you to select your colors. It allows you to add your headline and modify a body. So it is the same principle. You can choose how your first group is named, and so on and so on. So this is really important for just getting the customers or the end users approval. You can see how Kickstart looks immediately after installation. So we show you a getting started modal, and in there you can immediately see videos and screencasts of common Kickstart functionality. So you can allow us to show you how it is used. We link to all of our help pages. We provide quick links to our service providers. We just provide you the whole guidance. And of course, we do provide help on every relevant page. So if you go to, I don't know, the page for payment providers, we will show you what that means and what your options are, and so on. You can see the other tab that is the complete help page based on advanced help, where you can see all topics, and each topic has a video associated. It also has a direct search that points to our website. So I really believe that this helps the user get oriented much faster. So the admin UX is probably our biggest problem. This is something that we customize the most, and people really get religious when it comes to their pet solutions, especially around admin menus. So first of all, the 7th theme is frequently bland, and you do need to add a lot of custom theming for your own modules or maybe additional contribs. So at one point it does make sense to provide a custom theme, or maybe just use ours. So we created the shiny admin theme that you can use, and it provides an experience that is much closer to Drupal 8, for instance. So what does the user expect? Well, it expects to have a view for every admin listing. It wants that view to be VBO enabled so that they can delete multiple items at the same time. They probably want the date module so that they can have date pickers for their exposed filters. They also might appreciate having chosen, which provides a much easier way of selecting multiple items in the exposed filters. Of course, the modules page inside Drupal 7 is completely unusable, so we do need to install module filter and use that. Then we have the backport and special menu admin modules, which were created by Acquia for Commons, and they're basically backports of Drupal 8 improvements to Drupal 7. And I actually discovered them in Panoply, so they provide a better menu screen and they provide improvements to the horrible field UI where users go to die. But this makes it just a bit more bearable, so it is a good thing to have. And you can see how actually that works in Kickstart. So we have the shiny theme that provides the blue buttons and a different overlay look, and themes the drop buttons that we have in Drupal 8 core as well, which allow us to group links and focus on the main link, the main function that we have. We have a special styling for views bulk operations where you select the bulk operation at the bottom. We have specially themed exposed filters with chosen, so you can see that I can select the bags and cases or some other product type in a easier way. We have search implemented for every list. And this search currently just does a regular query against the database, but at one point I would like to see all admin listings be Search API powered, because if you have many pieces of content or many products, the database search won't cut it, and you will want to point to the Solr instance that you will have in any case for a much faster user experience. So that is something that's on my wish list for the future. And of course, there's faceted search. I'm not sure anyone actually uses the default Drupal search anymore unless they have to. They either use the Apache Solr module directly or they use Search API, which has the benefit of allowing you to use the database when Solr is not there, for example, in a development instance, but allows you to use Solr when it is present. And that way you can build powerful views that query directly against Solr, which is crazy fast, and you can have generate facets, for example, for, in this case, the brands, the colors. I have a price slider, and this all comes out of the box and even adjusts to your data model. So as I create new product types and change my attribute type, setting a size, for instance, or something like that, the facets get created automatically and recognized, and the index can then get updated. And this auto generation is something that only Kickstart is doing at the moment. We are also powering all of our front-end listings by Solr, well, by Search API, because it's always a faster solution when you do have it, and it allows us to be more consistent in what we are doing while providing better performance and functionality in the long run. And this is why you will see faceted search in every single Drupal distribution today. So pick any one of them, it is there. Of course, being responsive is no longer optional. Your site does need to look good on a tablet, on a mobile phone, and so on. People already use base themes for everything. So you have the popular ones such as Omega. Kickstart uses Omega 3. Recruiter uses Omega 4, which is more Zen-like and really cool. Commons uses adaptive theme. You have Zen. So all are good solutions if you don't want to build your own. Of course, this is just for the front end. We need to take into account that the admin pages are not responsive, which means you can't really get a customer with a tablet or a phone and point him to the admin pages. It won't work. And you can try to mitigate that, so you can install the navbar, which is the backport of the Drupal 8 responsive toolbar to Drupal 7. And you can use the responsive tables module to make your admin listings degrade, but once they go to an add or edit form, they will scream. So it would require a large amount of work. You can attempt to do that. For now, we just gave up, and Drupal 8 is trying to, and successfully actually addressing that. There's also the question of panels. So, show of hands, who is using panels today? Huh, I expected more. So, Kickstart itself is not using panels because I didn't want the additional complexity in a half-baked way. It really does need documentation and additional resources. But it's really something that I do use on every site, and Panoply really shows how powerful panels are because they allow you to have a different layout for different pages, and those layouts can all be responsive, and it really gives you a lot of flexibility. You can also have in-place page building, which is arguably a faster way of doing it. You can also change the layouts for forms, so you can have the node edit form in multiple columns and reorganized and so on. And it is frequently used by distributions. I can say that pretty much every distribution except my own is using it, so Panoply, Commons, Recruiter, NodeStream, they all have it and use it for more or less, and Panoply is absolutely king there. If I was starting Kickstarts today, I would probably base it on Panoply, but I'm still unsure about the community buy-in when it comes to panels. I know most of us use it, but that's not the same as everyone. It's a topic to be discussed, and of course panels is a huge suite of modules, and it has a lot of its own terminology. There are, of course, other solutions that are used across distributions that I probably won't have time to mention. But, for example, you have Message and Message Notify, which are completely awesome, used by both Commons and Commerce Kickstart. And they allow you to have activity streams which are translatable. You can send notifications by email or SMS. You can also use it to centralize all of the emails that you're sending and have more powerful tokens, more easy to use templates that don't require you to go into the rules UI. I frequently gush about these modules probably as much as I did for Migrate back in the day. Then there are, for example, breadcrumbs. Some of you might know that the breadcrumbs in Drupal by default are a disaster because they always use one menu and you frequently need it to be generated in a different way. So if you have products, you want the breadcrumb to be taxonomy based, or maybe based on another menu, or based on an entity reference field, or maybe just completely custom. So there are many ways of doing that. If you have blogs, you might want to show a link to a view that shows the blog post by date and so on. And so there are two big solutions for breadcrumbs. The first one is Crumbs. It is used by Kickstart. It's not that user-friendly or that developer-friendly, but it completely recreates the breadcrumb handling in Drupal, and it does that consistently on every level of the path, which means it is always consistent. It calculates it by asking what's my parent, what's my parent, what's my parent, until it goes to the root. And this is something that is actually going into, at least the basic idea is going into Drupal 8 right now. We have path breadcrumbs, which is a more user-friendly solution that will allow you to set a custom breadcrumb for one page, and you can have the same contexts and arguments and selection rules that a panel has. So if you're used to building panels, that way you can actually build breadcrumbs using the same approach. Of course, there are social links and logins that are quite popular. Kickstart uses service links, which don't require a web service. Commons uses ShareDis, which relies on an external service, but is also great. For a login, we have OAuth connector, which no one really likes, but it works the most, and we'll probably want to rewrite it at one point. So, and so on and on. I really believe that distributions can be used as great learning material, so you can see what the distributions are using and how they're using that, and at least use that to enhance your workflow. Go and build something. So build something for a client, build a distribution, share something, show the Drupal community what you can do and how flashy it looks. Start experimenting, and by doing that, you will broaden the reach of Drupal and you will show everyone what Drupal is capable of. Questions? No? Well, I'm here all weekend in case you change your mind, and you can find me on Twitter, so feel free. Thank you.